Hi everyone, welcome back to a new video. Today I have this graphics card. This right here is an ASUS GeForce GTS 450. This card was released back in March of 2011 and is based on the GF116 graphics processor. It comes clocked in at 595 MHz and it also has 1GB of DDR3 VRAM, which comes clocked in at 800 MHz. For the rest, this card also has 192 shading units, 32 TMUs, 16 ROPs, and it supports up to DirectX 11. Let's find out what this GPU can still do in 2021. First off, time to unbox the card for the second time. I actually bought this card together with the GeForce 210 and HD 5770 from some previous reviews, but when I first tried putting the card into my system, a capacitor blew off the card, making some sparks fly through my PC. However, my dad managed to solder a new capacitor on the card, and after this, the card works fine again. I did replace the thermal paste, since a lot was wiped off while replacing the capacitor. Time to have a look at the card. Like you can see, this card is passively cooled with this big heatsink. For video out, this card has HDMI, VGA and DVI. This right here was the spot where the capacitor was that blew up. Like you can see, this card now has a new capacitor and it works fine again. Time to put the card into my PC. This right here is my test system and it features an Intel Core i7-3770K, 12GB of DDR3 RAM and an ASUS Sabertooth Z77 motherboard. Time to boot up the PC with this card installed. Time to install some drivers. This went smooth and easy. Time for some benchmarks. First off, Userbenchmark. This benchmark showed me that both the CPU and GPU were performing below expectations. The next benchmark was Heaven. On the high quality preset, the card managed to get an average FPS of 11.3 and a score of 284. The last benchmark that I ran was PerformanceTest. In this benchmark, the card got a score of 992 in the 3D graphics mark. Time to test some games. First off, Minecraft. On high settings, the card managed to get an average FPS of 101. With 1% lows of 57 FPS and 0.1% lows of 31 FPS. This game is absolutely playable on this card. Time to test Roblox. On high settings, Roblox was also perfectly playable. I got an average FPS of 60 with 1% lows of 43 FPS and 0.1% lows of 2 FPS. For some lighter games, Freddy Fazbears Pizzeria Simulator ran absolutely fine. Ultimate Custom Night was also perfectly playable, so for lighter games, this card is perfectly usable. Time to move on to some more intensive games, starting with Euro Truck Simulator 2. On low settings, this game was perfectly playable. I got an average FPS of 51, with 1% lows of 45 FPS and 0.1% lows of 1 FPS. Bus Simulator 2 was also kind of playable. On low settings, this card managed to get an average FPS of 25, with 1% lows of 12 FPS and 0.1% lows of 7 FPS. Using low settings in CSGO gave a max FPS of 91 in the benchmark, while I was usually hovering around 50 FPS. In game I also got around 50 FPS, making for a playable experience. On the lowest settings, BeamNG Drive was just about playable. I got an average FPS of 31, with 1% loss of 22 FPS and 0.1% loss of 20 FPS. Bus Simulator 16 was actually surprisingly playable. On the lowest settings in the 1280 by 720 resolution, I got an average FPS of 34, with 1% loss of 20 FPS and 0.1% loss of 11 FPS. PC Building Simulator is really balancing at the edge of what this card can do. Even at the lowest settings in the 1024 by 768 resolution, this card managed to get an average FPS of 26, with 1% loss of 8 FPS and 0.1% loss of 3 FPS. The most surprising game that ran on this card was Fortnite. Fortnite was playable on the low preset. On the low preset, this card managed to get an average FPS of 61, with 1% loss of 35 FPS and 0.1% loss of 15 FPS. At low settings, GTA 5 was also playable. This card managed to get an average FPS of 25, with 1% loss of 17 FPS and 0.1% loss of 16 FPS. Time to uninstall the drivers and shut the PC down. Now, what do I think of this card? In my opinion, this card is still pretty usable in 2021. The drivers are stable and this card did not get hotter than 70 degrees even under load. This card surprised me in how good it can still handle games, and for how cheap you can find these cards online, I would say that this card is a good deal for if you want to game on a budget. And with that, this video comes to an end. Thanks so much for watching, comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye!